Certain cars just have headlights that are begging to be modified, and this is a Nissan 350Z headlight, one of the most commonly modified headlights ever, which also makes it one of the most commonly butchered lights when it comes to opening up the housing. So I'm gonna give you 10 tips on how you can open up your lights without damaging them, doing the same things that everybody else does the wrong way.
Honey, where's my butter knife?
Huh? We're not gonna do that. Let's dive in. Before we ever start anything on opening these lights, we need to preheat our oven. So step one is gonna be preheat your oven so that it can be at temperature before you need it. Preheating the oven is super important because it gets hot at a faster rate when it's trying to warm up, and it can melt lights. I've been doing this for about 17 years now, and in all of that time I've seen lots and lots, even from pros, lots of really nice lights melted, which can be a very costly, stupid mistake that you're really upset about if you happen to make it. Don't put lights in an oven that's preheating. Don't ever do it. So like I said, I've been doing this a super long time. I used to make these things before there were any Angel Eyes on the market, and that's how I got into custom lighting, opening and installing my own handmade Angel Eyes. Now, you could drop in something like this that looks much better than that, but watch how bright it is. So here's Chris, 2004, 2005. Boom! Buddy, these are two different things. Look, if we wanted to mount that ring behind this shroud right here, it would look beautiful, it would look amazing. Whereas back in the day, the stuff that I was making, well, I don't know. It's just not that good. So before we get to opening that up, let's actually look inside this oven. Now, I have this huge smoker oven that I could fit giant lights inside. But let's just take a look at how they would fit inside my oven inside my house. All right, back in the garage, almost ready for the oven. We need to do something very important. Number one, we need to use Milwaukee tools because they're dope. I love these M12 drills. They're awesome to take all of these screws out. We've got multiple screws that are gonna hold the lens on, and they're little guys, but they're not gonna let us take that lens off if we try to stick them in the oven without these coming out first. Okay, this step is really critical because as you can see, there's actually a tiny little screw right there, and it's hidden because it's covered in sealant. So just be super careful as you're taking all of your screws out to make sure you get every single one, even the ones that are hiding, like that sneaky little fella right there. All right, 220. That means we are ready to go. Now, I've seen three things happen at this point. Number one, people use things instead of these blocks of wood that don't really get that warm. They'll use a metal cookie sheet or something. That can melt the bottom of your light. Don't do that. Use wood blocks. Number two, I've seen people put their oven to 220 or 250 degrees Celsius. No, Fahrenheit, bro. 220 Fahrenheit. You wanna cook at 220 Fahrenheit because it's a low temperature. We just have to heat up the glue along the edge of the light. We don't wanna melt things. If you cook it at 250 Celsius, you're gonna have a puddle of headlight. Don't do that. Third thing is, I've seen people smash the like button to help this video grow. One more thing, people ask me about these wires. They ask me about the bulbs inside and the top and the bottom. They're fine, don't take them out. They're made to run at higher temperatures. The oven at 220 degrees is not gonna mess them up. Don't be worried, just stick them in there. Just make sure they're not sitting on metal, they're sitting on wood. You also wanna make sure, wiggle the light, see if it's gonna fall. If it's good, now you can start your time. Okay, another tip for you. You can use a heat gun. You do not have to use an oven, but there are some downsides and some pitfalls to that. Now this is a heat adjustable one. I love this, it's cheap. I'll put a link to it below. But here's the thing, when you're going around a headlight, especially looking at it from this angle, you're just trying to heat up this glue that's in the channel. And you can see that glue, it's holding onto the lens equally in all these different spots all the way around. So the problem is as you're going around this light, you're never keeping consistent heat at the whole seal. It's not evenly being heated up. It's only getting hot in one section at a time, which means later on when you start prying on it, it's not gonna evenly release. There's gonna be spots that fight you harder than others. So you can do this. This can lead to much more problems, and it can just be harder overall. So don't be scared, man. Use the oven. You can also stick this thing in a box, shove a tube that's hooked up to a heat gun in it, and make a bootleg oven. But I think you probably can just use your oven. Probably the only thing I've ever heard that tells me that you should not use an oven for certain lights are newer lights that have little circuit boards inside with solder and stuff. Those have lead in them. You don't want to put that in your regular family oven that you cook food in, because it's just not good. It's not an okay thing to have those fumes rise and get stuck in there with that bad stuff in it. So only use an oven if you've got an older set of lights, not some brand new BMW stuff. You should cut those anyway. That's another video though. And another big tip, you saw I've got these Gorilla Grip gloves on. That is because it's gonna burn my hand when I take the lights out. And I've got this one too, but this has some of the glue on it from the last set of lights I worked on. So instead of transferring this glue to the new set, I'm just gonna take that off, glove up on both hands, and then I'm gonna put new gloves on top of these, all right? Now I'm ready to work, and when I'm done, I can just tear off these and it won't mess up my nice gloves because I love these gloves. Okay, the timer just went off. I've got my pad that I'm gonna set this thing on so it doesn't slip around as I'm working on it. And I've also got these 2 screwdrivers that I'm not gonna use because it will mess up the light. Don't pry with these. That is the biggest novice move. That's the first mistake you're gonna get from any of these other videos that show you these guys taking lights apart. They just shove these things in there and start prying. What do you think that does when you go to reseal the lights? It's probably pretty important that after we do all this cool stuff to the inside of the lights, that they seal back up properly and that they don't have a bunch of pry marks and holes and things that can lead to moisture getting in. That's the enemy here. Don't use those tools. I'm gonna show you how to open up these 350Z lights just using the points of the lens where it's pushed into place in the little tabs. We're just gonna tear it apart with our 2 hands. Now we've got a few things to focus on right off the bat. All of these little tabs, they're gonna fight us as we go. So we're gonna kind of bend them out of the way. There's one up here on the side, and these will bend back into place later, but it's gonna be far different than if we just pry into it with some screwdrivers. Find a point that doesn't have a tab or something that you can break if you set it down, and then you wanna find a spot that looks like it's reinforced, like this mounting tab. You wanna have that with your strong arm, and you can kind of push your chest into the light and just rip on that one section right here. And as you go, you can see the little tabs. They want to fall back into place. So you might have to lift them back up as you go. Now this is hot. It can also stick to your shirt, which is why I think we need FlyRyde aprons. That'd be dope, right? Okay, so I'm just using pressure here. And now, one thing that you can use one of those big dumpy screwdrivers for is you can use it to catch all these little stringy flyaways, the glue, the rubber butyl, because you don't want that getting on your nice shiny parts inside. So I'm gonna try to take this whole lens and push the whole thing forward while keeping the back part of it closer to me. That's gonna create a little gap right here. I can try pulling towards myself as well. You just wanna make sure that it's not trying to sit back down into position. It's coming towards me. And there we go. Now we can use our screwdrivers. They're finally useful. See, we didn't damage anything, and that means when it's time to reseal these things, all we have to do is just slide everything right back into place how it was before. A lot of times, at the point that you even get the lights open, they're kind of damaged already. See that? And these little stringy flyaways can be very pesky at this point because they can get down on these little reflectors. So you want to use your tool to get them out of the way. And now we're safely inside of the light. That was the goal, to get to this step. Now, something I didn't include on one of my last videos, we're going to talk about right now. This is kind of a pro tip if you intend on keeping these things open for a long time. I used to just put the lens right back on in place after I took out the internals, but this light has a big giant hole in it. So that's not gonna really seal things off. So we're gonna wrap up this lens to make sure that it's completely sealed off so that no dust or anything creeps inside over the course of the time of us modifying the lights. A lot of times it takes 2-3 days of this process. Not too bad, but look, perfect gloves, no problem. Okay, so while we still have this lens nice and warm, we want to do a couple things. We want to look around the lens anywhere where there might be some of this glue that is bent down in the way of this internal bezel, this big plastic piece inside. We want to make sure that we mush all this stuff up and out of the way so that it doesn't get in our way when we try to take that out, because that actually sucks a lot when you slide that whole thing out and it catches on a little glob of glue. strings out and then gets stuck on that part, and you try to scrub it off, and it might even take the paint with it or the chrome or whatever it has on there. All right, so we're getting all that out of the way. Looks good. Now we just got to take out a couple screws. There's only going to be a certain amount of screws that hold this thing into place. We've got one right here, one right here. You can also take this thing out in sections, which is what I did on the last one, but it's not necessary because the whole thing will lift out just like that. All right, so we've got a couple little housekeeping items we need to do next. Starting with this lens. We don't want anything to happen to it. If you're only gonna be in here for a minute, one cool trick that my buddy Jay told me is you can take a ground strap, like from a anti-static mat, and you can actually ground yourself so that while you're working on stuff, you're not creating static. So I don't want to have anything that's creating that as I work with it. Right now, I know I'm not gonna be messing with it, so I'm just gonna take this thing and stick it away, and then we're gonna address all the other little parts that we need to take care of. All right, so both of my lenses have been removed and they've been wrapped, and look, there's nothing that's gonna push down on the inside of the lens, because you never, ever want anything to touch inside that lens. If you want me to make a video telling you why and how and what to do if anything touches inside the lens, comment below in the comment section. Just let me know you'd be interested in seeing that video, what to do if you're trying to clean the inside of your lens. If you're really interested, I'll make it for you. Okay, I can go put these safely away on a shelf and not worry about them getting messed up. That leads me to the next section, which is I need this bin because there's another part that's clear plastic that I don't want to mess up. This top lens right here. We're gonna take that out, set it into this, and put this box away as well. Okay, yet again, we are going to put fresh gloves on. And the reason for that is that we don't wanna have fingerprints or anything touch these black chrome sections on here. They're very glossy, and you can't really polish out glossy paint or any sort of a chrome surface without leaving little streaks behind. And plus, I don't wanna put my fingerprints on this nice clear piece of plastic, because that too cannot really be polished out. I don't want to put a tool in there on the top and pry, because that's going to leave a mark, but it looks like I can easily come back here and it's released. You can work your way around the lens and just use the little pressure fittings that are holding it in there and safely remove that guy, set it in there, and get it put away. I've seen people just throw these things away, and I could only imagine it's probably because they manhandled them and got marks all over them, and they just think it'll look better without them. I actually think it looks more OEM when you customize your lights and you leave everything into place how it was, just making it look like it came that way. So there's a good example of those tiny little scratch marks that you can see. That's not even from touching it, that's just what was in there. That would be very hard to clean up because it's just gonna leave more little streaks, and for most angles, it looks absolutely perfect. But if you're that hardcore nitpicky dude, you're gonna see little things in there. There's not a lot you can do about it now. So imagine that, but inside the actual lens itself, that's the worst, because it looks like a smudge on the outside that you can't clean, and every time the light hits it, it's just gonna be very, very apparent, which is not what we want at all. We wanna be clean, get in there, get out like a ninja. Like a ninja. Do awesome work, don't leave any evidence that we were ever there. Okay, well now you're in the lights. If you were looking at doing something cool like adding one of these little honeycomb lenses in there, or whatever you decide to do, that's what you needed to get to this point. But to finish up and to be thorough about how you seal these things back up, I don't recommend that you just put the lens right back on how it was, because we've got this channel that has been interrupted by taking that lens off. So there's little thick spots and inconsistencies in there, and we don't know if there's gonna be any little air bubbles trapped in there. So what we wanna do instead is we want to put in more butyl headlamp sealant. So this is rubber butyl. It's available from multiple different companies. So you can get it from Diode Dynamics, you can get it straight from NHK, or you can get it from Morimoto, called Retro Rubber. It's all the same stuff. Hot melt adhesive, butyl headlamp sealant, it's rubber butyl. And if you look inside, it's the same stuff that's in the headlamp already. And what you're gonna do, if you're resealing it, you would take it and you would just start working your way along the edge, and you'd stretch it, push it into place. If you stretch it, it's gonna thin out, so that will allow you to get as thick or thin of a butyl addition to what's already there. Common question, do I need to remove what's in there? No, because it's the same stuff. It's gonna be completely uniform once it gets really hot. So don't take out the butyl if it's already in there. The only kind of sealant that you wanna take out is gonna be what they call Permaseal, which is gonna be more of a plasticky style that has to be completely removed because it's not sticky anymore after you take it out. So I've roughly done half the light. I've got it pushed into place on the outside so that when the lens comes back on, not only is it gonna go back into the channel how it originally was without it being all messed up by prying on it with one of these big dumb screwdrivers, but it's gonna be good to go with extra sealant and it's gonna grab the outside of the lens. I don't like to run it on the inside channel because you still might have an air gap between the outside of this little lip right here and the clear plastic. So I run it on the outside all the way around the light, and then I put the thing back together, stick it back in the oven. This all gets really soft, and then you can push it back into place and clamp it down in various places around the light, and then you put your screws back in and you're good to go.